to welcome everyone to my friend Gary Wild's memorial dinner. I met Gary 30 years ago, really more than 30 years ago. And they've asked me to bring a picture of Gary, which I have. You can see a man there with a white suit. And that's Gary. And he has a beard. And this picture was taken in 1982. So that's even more than, that's 38 years ago. I was a Cook County public defender doing death penalty cases when I first met Gary. And he, of course, was a member of the North Suburban Bar Association. Gary introduced me to a lot of the people who turned out to be wonderful, welcoming people. He had a way of welcoming new members to the North Suburban Bar Association. He went out of his way to make them comfortable. And he made the North Suburban Bar Association grow over the years, develop more members. He also made the North Suburban Bar Association part of the coalition of suburban bar associations. And they grew to have a good reputation throughout Cook County because of his efforts. I can tell you a little bit about Gary's practice. He specialized in doing Social Security disability cases, and he helped a lot of people who needed support because they weren't able to work. And Gary was very committed to trying to help them. He also did work in helping indigent people who were possibly involved in a criminal case, or at the juvenile court, they were parents or children who needed help in those courts. And Gary volunteered to do a lot of that work and was very well thought of there. He was a member of the American Civil Liberties Union. And because the two of us tended to represent poor people and underdogs in our system, we had a mutual respect for one another, and over the years that grew. Gary was also involved in local politics in the suburb where he lived, which was Evanston. I lived in Skokie at the time, and I did my work, but I was not involved in politics. In 1992, the Cook County sub-circuit system, way of selecting judges on a smaller area, in a smaller area rather than the whole of Cook County, was developed. And at that time, Gary urged me to run for judge. You know, I always thought it was sort of a miracle, but I got elected. My first assignment as a judge was at the juvenile court. And I tell this story because to me it's funny, and I think it was funny to Gary later, not so much the first time, because he appeared in my court shortly after I had been assigned to the juvenile court. And when his case was called, he had a big, broad smile on his face because he was appearing before someone who was a friend of his. And I was concerned that people might think I was not impartial. And so I told the lawyers and Gary that I was going to recuse myself. His smile changed immediately to a disappointment. So we laughed about that because that was pretty much a shock to him. Gary passed away at much too young an age. And I'm really very appreciative of the North Suburban Bar Association not forgetting about him and doing this dinner every year. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Romanoff. I'm a longtime member of the NSBA and a longtime member of the board of directors of the NSBA. I knew Gary for a long time. I do remember going to Gary's office. I was a criminal defense lawyer, but I also practiced at juvenile court, and we would get together at times. And I can also substantiate about Gary being a great lawyer, an excellent lawyer. But one thing that he and I had in common was that if you ever saw Gary's desk, which I had occasion to see, and it was very close to looking like what my desk looked like. And in fact, I used to show clients a couple of plaques which said, "I'm an excellent lawyer, not a neat lawyer, and that creative minds are seldom tidy." And that certainly was described Gary in many ways. But even though he was a great lawyer, the plaques that I have shown you certainly described him fully. Thank you.
I'm Paul Plotnick, attorney at law. Been practicing law for 46 years. I knew Gary Wild very, very well. Gary and I did a lot of pro bono work in juvenile court over the years. And going to juvenile court, it was kind of a place, at least in those days, that you hurry up and wait. So you sit there and you have opportunities to talk to people. Gary was the type of guy that would help anybody and was not really interested in money. I always felt that Gary should have been the guy that should have gotten all kinds of awards, but he was really, really a good guy. And it's what every lawyer should strive to be. They should be like Gary, because lawyers are there to help people, and that was exactly what he thought about. And if he was around today, he would still be an inspiration. I dearly, dearly miss him. Thank you very much.
I'm Lonny Ogus, an old friend of Gary Wild's, who we're here to pay tribute to. And I'm not sure exactly how I met Gary. I can't remember anymore. But he was the president of Decalogue Society, a Jewish lawyers group in Chicago. And he was actually going to be the president. He was the next president coming up. He said, "Please be on the board of directors. I could use another vote." So I joined the board of directors and eventually became also president of Decalogue a few years later. Gary was a person who loved to go out and eat. One of the things, of course, that he is famous for is Fannie Mae candies. Gary would walk up LaSalle Street near my office, and he would stop in at Fannie Mae every single time he went by. And he would go in and get one, not two, one Fannie Mae. That was his love of Fannie Mae, but he knew he couldn't eat more than that. I also represented Gary. He's not here, so I can tell the story. As I've told it before, I don't think I'm getting any more trouble. Gary was arrested in the suburbs for a DUI. Gary blew 0.00. The police officer was not happy that Gary blew 0.00 and took him to the hospital so that they could draw blood from him. The blood came out 0.00. When the traffic ticket was dismissed, I represented Gary in his lawsuit against that police officer and the village. Gary would be thrilled to know that his name and his civic mindedness is still being kept alive at the NSBA. And the fact that there are yearly recipients of grants and donations and honors under his name, under the bar's name, would thrill him to no end. And I want to make sure that we take a drink and everybody has a drink for Gary. He would appreciate everybody getting together and having a good time, having a good meal, and doing good things. Okay.
My name is Gail Vernicell. I am a past president, 1999-2000, of the North Suburban Bar Association. I am excited and honored to be a part of this program tonight in honor of Gary Wild. I would like to thank the North Suburban Bar Association board members and welcome guests for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you. I met Gary back in probably 1991, 92, when as a new lawyer, I had attended my first meeting at the North Suburban Bar Association. I was well into my 30s when I got my law degree, so it was somewhat intimidating to be joining a bar association that had people my age who'd been practicing for years. Back then, the Bar Association met at Hackney's down in the lower level on Lake Street in Glenview. I went to that first meeting, went downstairs. It was a large crowd of people, and I probably looked as nervous as I felt because I wasn't standing there very long when a gentleman came up to me and introduced himself, asked me my name, and I think the rest is history. That gentleman was Gary Wild. We had an opportunity to speak for quite some time. He introduced me to other members. He invited me to sit with his group of people to have dinner and made me feel extremely welcome. Over the years, I got to know Gary, and I think he embodies a lot of what the North Suburban Bar Association is. We're a smaller bar. We are a very friendly bar. We are a bar association where lawyers have made friends that have lasted for years. It's almost 30 years since my first meeting, and I am still a participant with the North Suburban Bar Association. Gary was a good resource for networking and also connected you with other people when you met. I hope that that's what we continue to do as part of the Bar Association when people come in and get to know us, and that we walk up to them and we learn a little bit about our new members when they come in and carry on that tradition that Gary did. Just shortly before I became president, Gary passed away. And it was in my year as presidency that we established this memorial dinner for Gary. And it was an opportunity to recognize Gary's work. And so that's what this award is about, to recognize those agencies that do the work that Gary did. And so I'm very thrilled to see that probably almost 20 years now that we have been doing that and recognizing many agencies for the work that they do. The attendees to this event also appreciate his legacy because they continue to come year after year and participate in the event. And I would hope that the Bar Association continues their work following in Gary's path. And I've always felt that our Bar Association does work closely with community, with each other. And we all sort of learned a little bit from Gary and take it with us in our everyday life. And I thank you again for giving me the opportunity, and good night.